Hello and welcome back to DriveDriverDriven. I'm Humble and we're back again on the Blunicorn project. Things are a little bit of a mess in the garage, but there's been some more progress off camera that I'll catch up to speed on. So where we left off with the windows in and the windshield in, the glazing done. If I close the door, you can see I've cleaned up a little bit on the sides, but not a whole lot. I want to go over that a little bit later and clean these up. The whole car is going to need to be gone through to remove stuff like this tape residue and all the finer scratches and stuff. And then like down in here, just some more leftover of that bond-in seal that we're probably going to have to touch up in a few areas as well. The elephant in the room is the rear clamshell is on again, mostly because what I was waiting for to put this on for the last time finally happened. It's difficult to show you with the clamshell closed, but to the topic of today's video is actually these Aerocatch latches to be installed on the rear clamshell. Now I've done the passenger side here. It was the first one to get done, and I can show you a little bit about how these work and how we got them installed. So you push this flap release here. That's just a safety catch for the actual lever, and then as I open this, you can see right in here the catch pin pulls out of our actual, what would usually be a hood pin, and that releases this pin. So now we can just lift up the clamshell, because I only have one of these installed, and everything will open. Now originally I was going to put this pin back here in this area, but I didn't like how much leverage the clamshell had on this area of the side pod. Even though there's kind of more meat, more angles and stuff meeting here, I just didn't like how much leverage the clamshell could pull on this part. So I wanted to move it closer to our center tub, where our center tub bolts in, because this sort of anchors the side pod and everything down in this area along with the doors. So I wanted to bring that pin latch forward, and then also by doing so increase its sort of holding power on the rear clamshell. Now you can see this is still loose, and the reason is underneath here I want to put a piece of like aluminum flat stock to support the underside here on the side pod and spread that load. So it just doesn't rip this pin out right through the fiberglass, which it absolutely will. Even with these washers on it, it'll just tear straight through. So that's what we're going to work on today. Like I said, I haven't touched the other side yet. But to catch you up on some work off camera, if we look back here, this is something that only those of us who are doing Evo upgrades will have. If you have an RS chassis straight from the factory, you'll have something different. And what this is a wing rest for the stanchions on the rear wing. So how this works is our wing mounts to some boxes back here. I'll see if I can poke the camera in. So right here in this area is where our wing mounts, and it mounts there to the basically the side of the rear clamshell right through here. And this step is, if we close our clamshell, you can see that lowers sort of right above where that aluminum bar stock is. So what happens is, as the rear clamshell closes, it brings the end of our wing stanchions down, and it closes on this, so that this piece of bar stock supports all of the aero load from the rear wing. I mentioned in a previous video, this differs from the Evo setup, which had a wing that mounted here, roughly on the back of the rear clamshell, and then its loads went through a support that bolted into the rear clamshell up in this area, and then all the way down to this rear eyelet. And then all aero loads actually went through the rear body mounts, which caused problems at high speeds. If these weren't tight, or if they weren't tight enough, going 200 miles an hour would be enough to force these eyelets down and open up a gap up here in the front of the clamshell. And if it wasn't secured properly, or if it wasn't secured enough, the whole clamshell could just rip off the car. And that has happened to a few Ultimas doing high-speed runs. This RS version that supports the aero loads using this pillow block here, in my opinion, is a better design, just because it takes the aero load and puts it into the chassis up here versus into the actual body pivots down below. You can see down below here, this is the area that rests on the pillow block, and our bolts that hold these stanchions upright just go through here on our actual uprights, or our wing stanchions. Now, they're not drilled yet, and we're going to get to that in a later video, but I just wanted to demonstrate how all of the load is transferred down here into the chassis for the RS. So enough with the diversion. Back to the matter at hand is, just like on the passenger side of the car, we need to install the Aerocatch onto the driver's side of the car. I've already laid out some painter's tape here and put our template in place. Now, again, with the help of some cardboard, what I did is I lined up this edge and then down here with the corresponding edges on our serial box here and our template. And that's basically how I transfer this position from one side to the other. Likewise for the other side, just mirrored, it'd be like that. So with this template in place, what we're doing is we're cutting out a hole that's just big enough for our actual latch plate to sink in and sit flush with the body. And then once this is clearanced out enough, we'll drill some holes and bolt everything to sandwich the body through the mounts and this backing piece here, so that once it's all together, it'll sit like this with the body sandwiched in between. Now, I've covered this before when working with the fiberglass. My favorite tool is this plunge and cut tip, which is perfect for things like wood, ceramics, fiberglass, etc., where you can just basically stab it in and then work it around. And what we're going to do is just work until the edge of this, and then we'll come back with a file and clean up the last little bits, and we'll test fit as we go along. So let me go ahead and put the camera set up, and we'll get to it. All right, so I've filed the hole. I've got a perfect fit here with the Aerocatch. I've already penned in all of our mounting holes so that when I pull that out, now we can get these drilled. And that's what I'm going to do next, is I'm going to drill these mounting holes so that we can get this bolted onto the clamshell. Alright, we got our holes drilled, so now we're going to go ahead and get our Aerocatch bolted onto the car. Alright, so here's our backing plate. We have these captive, I think these are M4 nylock nuts in the back of this thing that are held in place just with a friction fit, so you just push them in with your fingers. And then we'll put this plate behind here and start sending this hardware through. Alright, so now we have our catch bolted into place, nice and flush. So our next step is we need to find where this pin locates underneath here. What I did previously is there's two lines here. I'll grab you off the mount here. So we have these two lines, and then the hole for our catch pin goes right between them. So what I did was I drew a line down each way to locate kind of roughly in this area where that pin is going to fall. And then I just started, I drilled one hole and then opened that hole more and more. And if we go to the other side, through the magic of garage lighting, you can see a little bit better. So this is sort of what you end up with, is this kind of like rectangular hole. And the reason is when you close this, the body closes in an arc. So if we straighten this pin out, as the body falls, it comes at an angle like this, and it'll eventually clear and come over the pin. But as you open it up, it'll interfere with the top of this pin. So what you have to do is you end up opening this hole a bit more than you think, just so that you can clear the pin as it shuts. So as I bring it down, you can see it'll just clear. And now that the pin's all loose, it doesn't line up. Once that tightens up, that won't be an issue. But again, when I open the body up, kind of catches a little bit there, but you get the gist of it, how because this closes in an arc, it'll catch the top of that. So that's what we're trying to clearance under here. So you may have noticed the side scoop came off because I dropped this pin down in there and I couldn't reach it, so I had to pull the cover off for the I had to pull the scoop off so that I could reach the pin. And then speaking of pin, I had to remove probably about 2 inches off the end of it so that it doesn't interfere with the body down below here when you put the pin into place. No harm done, it just makes it a little shorter. That way it fits in the car. And just like the other side, we're going to put this guy into place. Just feed the hardware up from the bottom side. And again, this isn't the permanent position because we still need to put that piece of aluminum strap underneath here. What we want to do is just make sure it lines up and that we can close our clamshell. And we're done. At least we're done with the latches here. I'm not going to put the side scoop in until we get the aluminum stock in there. It's just harder to work on the driver's side because the oil cooler here is in the way. So I can't get to things from the back side. I have to come in through here. So we'll put that back once we get the aluminum straps in. But for now, I'm going to call this done. All right, one last little addition. Again, happened off camera, but there's really not much to installing this. This is the rear carbon diffuser. I didn't point this out before, but I did mention that the RS has a larger rear opening here than the Evo did. And it gets this carbon fiber diffuser as an option. I didn't really film mounting it because it's basically a nothing task. Quickest way to sort it out is this very leading edge. Just match it underneath the clamshell and then come back and measure this lip back from where the license plate mounts. And this should be about 50 millimeters, give or take. And just make sure it matches side to side, and then make sure you have your splitter centered left to right. And then it's just held in place with some M4 hardware that riv nuts into place on the rear clamshell. So basically just secure this with clamps, drill through where you're going to see some depressions in the carbon, which are locations where the screws need to go. And then come back through, make the holes a little bit bigger and put your riv nuts in, and then fasten your diffuser in place. And that's all there is to it. It really is a super simple job. But the end result is a very good looking piece of kit. And then lastly, just to wrap up where we were on latches for the rear clamshell, is I got these trimmed down and painted. They're still a little wet, but all I wanted to do is just keep them from being blaring silver underneath the clamshell. So let those cure up a little bit, and then they're going to go up underneath here. They'll be bonded into place, and then I might also rivet them into place. We'll see if I need to go that far. I just don't think I'll need to. And then once those are in, the rear clamshell fastening is done. I mentioned previously why I wanted to go to these external latches, these Aerocatches, before, but I just want to reiterate that now, which is while the Ultima latch system works perfectly fine, the issue was where the fire was on my car prevented the firefighters from opening the rear clamshell. They just couldn't get to the pull handles, and then by the time they could get enough water onto the fire to cool things off, they still wouldn't have been able to open the rear clamshell because those control cables had melted due to the fire itself. So in this instance, with these external latches, they can quickly and easily open the clamshell externally without needing to get into the car, and then they can do so quickly so that they can open the clamshell without having to damage it like they did before. So if they were able to open the clamshell, I would have had basically more good parts to salvage on the car. So like my side pods, at least one of the side pods would have been okay. And had they been able to get to the fire soon enough, potentially even my rear clamshell would have been okay. So these are just things to think about if you're going to be taking a car to the track, or if you just want to pay some mind to safety. So with that, I think this is a good place to call it. I want to thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.